Hello everyone, welcome back to the Pro MMA Betting podcast. Glad to be back. We've had about 6 or 7 week hiatus, so it's great to have UFC week upon us. I'm way more confident than last time that this UFC is actually going to happen. Seems like Florida's given the go ahead for combat and sporting events, and everyone seems to be singing a more confident tune than the UFC we had cancelled about 3 weeks ago. So I'm really confident that the UFC schedule's going to kick back in. We're going to have 3 shows in a week. We've got UFC 249 this Saturday. We've then got a UFC the following Wednesday, and then a UFC the following Saturday. There's another UFC the Saturday after that. There is a gap in the schedule at the moment for the 30th of May. Hoping that's going to get filled up. We do have a UFC confirmed for, I think it's the 6th of June, but there is a gap on the 30th. I've got a feeling he's going to release a show for that day, because I don't really understand what the point is in doing the UFC on the Wednesday otherwise, unless it's just to really ram it down people's throats that the UFC is the first sport back and to try and garner as many eyes as possible. I don't know. I don't know the mechanics behind how the business works and how TV works. It's a billion-dollar company, way above my pay grade. But I'm just glad that it's back. It opens up a big income stream for me. I'm sure this has been trying times for everyone with the world economy basically closing down, so it's great to have this opportunity to make some money again. We're going to break down the card as we always do, guys, from bottom to top. I do want to mention a few things though with regards to this card and the upcoming cards, because we aren't in a normal situation. Fighters aren't in a normal situation. Training isn't in a normal situation. A lot of these fighters are being given fights on very short notice. Now, as I've already mentioned, the world economy has been closed. These guys need pay and they need to earn money. They're going to be saying yes to fights whether they're in shape or not. They need that paycheck. I don't know how their situation works in America with the stimulus check and whatnot. I guess I'm not sure what the policy is on how you qualify for it, but I'm sure most of the fighters do qualify for it. But still, I mean, from what I've seen, I think it's like $1,200 per person. You know, that's not enough to keep people going if they need to pay their rent, their mortgage, their bills on top of that. They've got kids to feed, themselves to feed, their partners to feed. So people are going to be taking fights whether they're in shape or not. Most people, I mean, I'm sure most fighters have kept themselves ticking over, but the gyms are generally closed. A lot of people are having to train at home, utilise their own equipment. They're not getting the same type of training in, and it's going to create issues. We're going to see that in the coming weeks where certain fighters underperform, and we're probably going to see some underdogs winning that you wouldn't expect to win. The 2 things I have in mind that I'm concerned about are a cardio. Now, you can train your cardio on your own, but it really depends on the person. How self-motivated is the person to really push themselves? If you said to me, Tony Ferguson is stuck on a desert island and he's got 8 weeks to prepare for a fight, I wouldn't have any concerns whatsoever about someone like that being self-motivated enough to train his arse off and come in top shape. But there's plenty of other fighters out there that cut corners. They kind of need someone watching them every day, pushing them, giving them a schedule, telling them what to do, someone breathing down their neck. There's a lot of fighters that are going to cut corners and just aren't going to push themselves. And also, you can train your cardio, but the kind of cardio you get from actually sparring, you know, doing Shark Tank rounds, things like that, you just can't replicate that from running up hills and going on a run around the block, doing sprints, etc. Just not quite the same type of cardio, because you don't have the pressure that's being applied to you by sparring partners. You don't really have the same anxiety because you're not getting punched in the face, so you can't even prepare yourself fully on the cardio side. And the other thing is just general sharpness. One fight that comes to mind is, and I'll come to this when I do the next podcast, but for example, the Mike Davis fight taking on Giga. Now, I know King's MMA have been, I don't know if they've been fully open, but there's been a little squad of them that have been training all through this. Marvin Vettori, Giga, a couple of their other fighters as well. So they seem to have held their training down. But Mike Davis, for example, not picking on him here, it's just a fight I looked at yesterday, and I actually had some money down on Mike Davis blind, and once I looked at his Instagram and whatnot, I've actually, luckily the line moved in my favour and I've bought out of the bet. But he put up a post on the 8th of April saying he hadn't trained at all for 4 months because he was injured in January, and then as soon as he was fit again, he went into lockdown. Now, there was a video posted up on his Instagram of him sparring at American Top Team, and when I made the initial bet on Mike, I thought that video was from 3 weeks ago when he posted it, but it actually wasn't. It was just a past video that he'd posted up, and when you read his comment, he put, "I really miss training." So this guy hasn't trained for 4 months. He put that on the 8th of April. Now he's accepted a fight since then, so we've had like a 3-week window where I'm sure he's been able to get some kind of training done, and he has been doing training before all this happened at American Top Team. Now American Top Team is open to some extent. They're staggering how people come into the gym, etc. I don't know if Mike's been going now. I don't know if he's kind of a part of the furniture, so to speak, there, where they would allow him to come in under these circumstances. I've no idea. Now, there's going to be some fighters where their Instagrams, their social media isn't up to date, so you're going to be blind in terms of what they've been doing in preparation, etc. I know Jairzinho, who we'll come on to, has been training at home. He's been using his wife's weights to create his resistance training. You know, it's just some crazy stuff. So what I'm basically saying, guys, is this is unprecedented times. We've never had this happen before. I don't know how it's going to affect the fights, but I think it will. If I was you guys, I would tread carefully with your unit sizes. I wouldn't be going out and max betting anything in these circumstances. I'd maybe do half what you'd normally do. So maybe you say, oh, this is a 4-unit bet. I'd maybe keep it to 2 units, at least initially. Just see how the first few shows go. See if there is a big impact being felt from these unique situations that we're in. If after a few shows things seem pretty much as normal, then yeah, revert to your normal betting strategy. But I would just tread very carefully. Remember, I treat this as investing, not gambling. When I'm betting on a fight, I don't feel like I'm gambling. I feel like I'm investing. Feeling like this is a stock. This is a stock that I think is going to rise in price. This is a stock I think I'm buying at a good price now, and I think I'm going to make money off of it. I don't look at it like, oh, let's flip a coin. Yeah, let's just go with this side. These are some very dangerous fights with the situation, with the short notice, the training situation. Just tread carefully, guys. Just don't go. I just wouldn't recommend going fully in here until we've at least seen how the first few shows are. Just wait, just see how the first 3 shows go. It's 1 week. I know a lot of you are gagging to put a bet in and so forth, but guys, don't be an addict. Be wise. Just take the next week. Keep your bets smaller than usual. See how the fights transpire. If things go as you'd expect, fair enough. Revert to your normal betting. I will. But I'm going to treat these first 3 shows as a trial run, because I'm not expecting to see the same outcomes that I otherwise would. So just a word of warning stroke wisdom there. Like I said, there may be no difference whatsoever, but I'd be very surprised if there isn't. Just to recap on the last show that we bet on, it's been a long time, 6-7 weeks. It was Cage Warriors 113. We had a clean sweep on that one. We had Mason Jones. We max bet him 4 units. Unbelievable price, really. We managed to get minus 225, I think it was. Crazy price. I was so confident that he was going to steamroll McColgan. We got David Bear at a good price as well, 1.63 a unit on him. Very comfortable victory for him. And Aidan Stephen, we had a unit and a half on. What odds of 1.67? Crazy odds. I didn't go bigger because there wasn't much tape on Jack Collins. And Aidan Stephen is, he's not a world beater. This is lower level MMA when we're betting on Cage Warriors generally. So, but I so regret not going max betting that now after watching that fight. It was exactly, Collins was as bad in this fight as he was on the fight I found beforehand, which made me instantly bet Stephen. But Jack, that is possibly the best line of the year. I don't know if you're going to see a better line than that. If anyone's got 2 minutes, just go and watch Aidan Stephen versus Jack Collins. He was 1.67 American odds, about minus 150. Absolute. It was just like a newbie, someone that had just started MMA, having his first fight, getting in the ring with Aiden Stephen, who, as I said, he's no world beater, but he's a decent domestic fighter. Just absolutely annihilated him, took him down, manted him. It was like an old school fight from 1994. So unbelievable. So we had a good end to the, well, I guess it was felt like the end of the season with this massive break we've had. We've never had a break such as this before. Dana White is still insisting that he's going to get the scheduled 42 UFC shows in. He's contracted to ESPN to put out 42 shows. I think the UFC get like 750 million if they hit that contractual obligation. So I'm hoping we're not going to miss anything in terms of shows. Obviously, it's all going to be a bit more condensed. It makes things more rushed in terms of having to do tape. At the moment, the UFC is the only show, so it is more doable. But once you've got Bellator coming back, and I don't know if PFL is actually going to happen this year now, but if that all starts coming back as well, then there's going to be a point in time where we are absolutely crushed with MMA shows, and we're going to have to make decisions on what we cap and what we don't, because I don't want to be rushing my picks. As I said, I'm going to break down this card. Just one word of warning, guys. I've been smashing through the tape. I didn't want to jump in too early for tape on this card because I've had my fingers burned so many times with all the cancellations where I've done so much tape and it's just ended up being absolutely pointless. I've just wasted my time. So I did wait up until last week before I started capping this card. So I've done this card. There's also the other two cards to get through. I'm well into them. So I've probably capped about 20 fights in the last 10 days or so. So it does get to a point where they all start to merge into one. So I hope I'm not missing too much information, but cramming in all this fight time, watching fights and everything else it is difficult to remember every single detail. But I'm familiar with most of the fighters. It's not like we've got too many debuting fighters or fighters who I'm familiar with. So just doing some tape just always brushes up on your knowledge, reminds you of certain things you might have forgotten. So we're going to break through the card. As I said, we'll go as we always do from bottom, work our way up to the top of the card and the main event, which is an absolute barn burner of a fight. What a way to come back. So first fight on the card, we've got Ryan Spann taking on Sam Alvey in the men's light heavyweight division. So Spann has a 4-inch reach advantage here. He's 5 years younger. Both similar significant strikes landed per minute. I'm surprised Alvey's actually up at 5. It must be when he gets the KO and he blitzes that it must skew that figure, because I wouldn't consider him a 3 significant strikes landed per minute type of guy. Strikes absorbed, Spann's at 2.5. Alvey just over 3. Alvey, I've never seen a stat so low for takedown attempts. Alvey just does not attempt takedowns whatsoever. He's got very solid takedown defence. Spann, unlikely he's gonna. Alvey's just difficult to take down. I just don't think Spann will even go there. I think this is mainly going to be is going to be contested on the feet. So Spann trains out of Fortis MMA. He's coming off a number of wins. He won on the Contender Series, quick win over Saudi. Made his UFC debut against Luis Enrique, got a decision win there in a fairly entertaining competitive fight. He got a quick KO win over Lil Nog, and he's coming off a guillotine win over Devin Clark. Ryan Spann, he has a good ground game actually. I don't think he's going to get to utilise that here just because Sam Alvey is really difficult to take down, but he is a solid grappler. Actually held his own with Luis Enrique on the mat. In fact, probably out-grappled him, in fact, saying that. So solid grappling, but I think here the way he should approach this fight is use his length, use his speed, use his athleticism, and just fight from the outside, and if the knockout comes, the knockout comes. I'm not fully convinced about his chin. The Carl Robertson knockout, it was elbow, so I don't want to be too hard on him there. He did get hurt by Alex Nicholson in LFA, and I think he has been knocked out another time in his career. We're going back to 2014. Someone caught him, but it was 21 seconds. So as I've said a lot on this podcast, fighters do get caught cold early. It doesn't mean they're chinny. It's just, it is a thing. You can get caught cold where you're just not warmed up into the fight. So, and he has eaten some solid shots. I think Lil Nog landed a few shots on him. They just bounced off, and I think even Devin Clark at one point landed a big counter, but didn't seem to shake Spann at all. But Sam Alvey can crack, so he has got to be careful. He should just keep this fight long, like he did. I remember against Devin Clark, he did have him hurt, and like he rushed in to try and finish him. He should have just stayed back long. You don't want to be doing that against Sam Alvey. Sam belongs at middleweight though. I don't like him at light heavyweight. He moved up. He got the win over Valenti. That I actually thought Valenti won that fight, and he's coming off 3 straight losses. 2 of them KO losses. He got knocked out by Lil Nog. He got stopped by Jim Crute. You could argue the Jim Crute stoppage was maybe early, and then he lost the decision to Klidson Abreu in his last fight. I don't think he's a light heavyweight. He should be down at middleweight. He's just very unathletic, Alvey. He's done well to get as far as he has based on the kind of athleticism he has, the speed he has. What's got him through fights is he does have really good power, and he does have very good takedown defence. So he's always managed to keep the fight in his realm on the feet, but he's just so slow and lacklustre. He could catch Spann if Spann gets reckless, but if Spann fights sensible, he comes from a good camp, Fortis. He should come in with a smart game plan here, just to fight smart and fight long. I think I had about $3,000 on Ryan Spann when this fight was meant to happen a few weeks back, but I managed to get about -280. Spann's, he opened up at -400 and he's basically stayed there since, so I'm not touching him at that price. I think if there's any value on this fight, personally, I think it's the over 1.5 rounds, which is currently sitting at, what are we talking, -140, basically, -145. It's gone up a little bit from what it opened at. It was, well, not really, it's saying -135. It was at. I think if there's any value on the fight, that is it. I do have my reservations about Alvey's chin, and if it is starting to crack though. I know Ameev had him hurt. Lil Nog took him out. Jim Crute took him out. That does make me a little bit nervous because he was always known for having that solid chin, but he has had a couple of knockout losses recently, and they're at light heavyweight. Light heavyweights, it's a massive jump. It's 20 pounds. So these guys do hit a lot heavier. So it would be. I mean, Spann's so athletic, so quick. He should just be able to. But if he does fight Alvey long, then maybe he won't be able to find the fight-ending punch. But I don't know. I haven't bet it myself. But if you do want to bet the fight, I think you should be looking at the over possibly. Spann. What's Spann knockout? Let's have a look at that. Spann inside the distance is -130. What's the KO? Spann wins by KO is +185. That's surprising, because I do see this fight. I think there's some value on maybe the KO then, actually, because there's such a big difference between Spann inside the distance and Spann KO. So I just don't see him subbing Alvey. Unless it's a club and sub, I just see this fight playing out on the feet. So you've got, for me, I mean, depending on what side of the fence you sit on, I'd either, if you want to bet the fight, and I wouldn't go big on anything here, but I'd look at Spann KO +185, or I'd look at the over 1.5 rounds, depending on whatever, as I said, whatever you feel is going to happen, whether you think it is going to go long, or whether you think Spann is going to stop him. I think there's a value on the KO line a little bit, and the over, I wouldn't be surprised to see it go over. Let's have a look at how Spann done in UFC. So his last fight was under by 30 seconds. That was first round. The Henrique one went the distance. Saudi was a quick one. I mean, yeah, he does tend to get. I mean, you look at his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His last 9 fights, 8 of them have finished under 1.5. So he does finish people, or gets finished himself. But Alvey is durable, but is that chin cracking? That is the concern. I don't know. I guess if I had to bet it, I'd probably be leaning towards the over, but I'd need to have a little bit more of a think about it. But I'm definitely going with Spann here to win, whether it be a knockout or a decision win. Next, we've got the men's featherweight division. We've got Bryce Mitchell taking on Charles Rosa. This should be an entertaining fight on the Fight Pass prelims. Mitchell's got a 1 inch reach advantage over Rosa, similar height. Strikes landed per minute, Mitchell's just under 2, Rosa's just under 4. Strikes absorbed, Mitchell similar in terms of what he lands, he absorbs just under 2, and Rosa's up at over 4. Takedown average, Bryce just under 2, 28% takedown accuracy. Rosa up at just under 3, 34% takedown accuracy. Both takedown defence is quite low, 33% for Mitchell, 47% for Charles Rosa. So I'm looking forward to this fight. I know a lot of people that are pretty confident in Bryce Mitchell here. I'm not as confident. I haven't bet this fight. Bryce does hold that 12-0 record. He did lose on the Ultimate Fighter to Brad Catono, got submitted in the 3rd round, but they're classed as exhibition fights, so his actual professional record is unbeaten. We've seen him in the UFC 3 times. He got a good win over Tyler Diamond, who's a solid wrestler from Team Alpha Male. In that fight, Bryce showed how solid his wrestling is, because he actually out-wrestled Tyler in that fight. He lost the 3rd round, ended up getting stuck on the bottom for most of the 3rd round, but first 2 rounds, I think it was the first round that was competitive, and you could argue it either way. One of the first 2 rounds was close, and you could argue for one guy or the other. But still, it was an impressive performance against a strong wrestler. Really showed his wrestling skills there. Bobby Moffett fight, one of those attritional type fights. He was on his way to losing that fight. I remember I live bet Bobby Moffett in that fight, and he was a couple of minutes away from winning in the 3rd round. And then instead of maintaining top position, he started looking for a submission. It allowed Bobby Moffett to reverse the position, get his back, and almost finish him. And it was enough to sway the judges to give him the 3rd round. So it was a really competitive fight. And then he's coming off a really impressive win over Matt South. Took him down very early and actually managed to get a twister submission. I think we've only seen it in the UFC. Korean Zombie, is he the only guy to ever do it beforehand? So it was definitely the 2nd or only 3rd twister submission ever. So those kind of things stick in people's memory. They stick in bookmakers' memories. These extravagant submission wins. So sometimes they're factored into the price as well. Perhaps they were a little bit. The price has started to come down a little bit now, closer to where perhaps I feel it should be. Bryce is now down at, I think he's minus 150. Let's just double check that. Right, these fights in order. Minus 155. He is now the favourite. So he's got good wrestling. He's got a good, I think he's a southpaw. Let me double check that. Yeah, southpaw. He's got a good straight left hand. He has slowed down in fights, but he's one of those that kind of fights through it pretty well. You find you either get a fighter when they slow down, that's it, they're kind of dead on their feet. But Bryce is one of those guys that will fight through it pretty well. Kind of like who's the guy that's fighting on the next card? Marvin Vettori's one. You think he's slowing down, but he kind of fights through it pretty well. Bryce Mitchell is another one. Very game. Redneck type character, he's one of them just born to fight, very comfortable in there, doesn't get nervous. I think for someone like him, this whole training situation probably doesn't really affect someone like him. He's just someone that's comfortable to get in there and have a scrap. Charles Rosa, he's been very inactive basically. He's getting up there in age now. He's like 33 years of age. We saw him recently back in October against Manny Bermudez. Got a submission from the bottom. Basically got taken down, was on the bottom, and then managed to throw up a submission from the bottom. Fight was over in inside 3 minutes. We hadn't seen him for, it was about 2.5 years last time we saw him against Shane Burgess, where he got stopped in the 3rd round of a fight he was actually winning on. I think 2 judges had him 2 rounds up. He'll throw out a lot of volume on the feet. Not that he's particularly effective. He's a bit of an Elias Theodoro on the feet, where he'll just throw a load of volume out. It's a bit unorthodox. Could be hard to deal with, but there's not much kind of snap on what he's throwing. He's not really likely to finish you, but he's just annoying with the volume that he'll throw while you're standing. This fight, I think, it's hard for me to get a read on, because Charles Rosa, we've not seen besides the armbar that he threw up from the bottom against Manny Bermudez, we've basically not seen his ground game since the Yair Rodriguez fight. He managed to ground Yair in the third round for, well, pretty much the whole round. Now that fight was 5 years ago. So what improvements has he made in his grappling? Now he's always had a decent armbar from the bottom. He nearly catches Dennis Siver in the same armbar he caught Manny Bermudez in. But although he did hold Yair Rodriguez down for the whole of the third round, when you look at some of the other grappling sequences he's had, and like the Sean Soriano fight, for example, Sean's a striker, and Charles was getting takedowns on Sean, but Sean was generally scrambling back up to his feet pretty quickly. Charles's takedown defense isn't the best either. Again, referencing the Sean Soriano fight, who's a striker, Sean was actually landing takedowns on him in that fight. And we saw in his last fight, Manny Bermudez came out and took him down straight away. But there's just a lot of unknowns here, just because we just haven't seen Charles's grappling for 5 years. Since the Yair Rodriguez fight, Carl Bochniak fight was pretty much all stand up. Same with the Shane Burgess fight. And then the Manny Bermudez fight, he was taken down and he caught the armbar, but it was over in a couple of minutes. It's hard really. Armbars from the bottom in modern day MMA are extremely low percentage. I don't think he's catching Bryce Mitchell with the same. So I can see this being a scramble heavy affair, but I do see Bryce Mitchell implementing his wrestling. I think he can get takedowns on Rosa. On the feet, Rosa will throw a lot of volume. Bryce, as I said, he's got a good left hand. He's been way more active than Charles. Charles, he hasn't seen, he was in the third round last 3 years ago. Since he's gone beyond the first round, so there's just a lot of question marks about where Rosa's at. So I have to go with Bryce Mitchell here. He's someone that will fight for your money. He's going to stay on Rosa. He's going to try and wrestle him. Whether Rosa can get up from the bottom, Bryce's top control from watching the fights, I'm sure it wasn't great. People do get up from the bottom. I could just see it being a scramble heavy fight, but I just think Bryce, being the younger guy, the more active guy, I think in a war of attrition he's going to come out on top. But as I said, I know a lot of people that are betting Bryce here and they're quite confident, but Charles Rosa is a dog. Like I said, he was 2 rounds up against Shane Burgess on the feet, and if you said that to me before the fight, I would have probably laughed at you. But whether you agree with it or not, I know a lot of people do feel that's quite contentious, but he was giving Shane problems with the volume he was throwing at him. And then the Yair Rodriguez fight, he lost a split decision there, but it was a close fight, and he shut down Yair in that third round, kept him down on the floor. I think it'd be an entertaining fight. It's going to be back and forth, but I do see Bryce coming out on top, probably by decision. So I'll see where the line goes. I may look at this fight again if Bryce's price comes down a bit more. He's minus 155. If he drops below minus 150, I might look at this again. At the moment, probably a pass fight for me. I do see it going to a decision, but that's probably baked into the price. Well, BetDSI actually have over 1.5 rounds, minus 350. I'd be very surprised if that didn't hit. I don't think that's a bad price, to be completely honest. Fight goes to a decision. It's kind of just under the minus 200. I'd really like playing that kind of price. Let's have a look at Mitchell wins by decision. Mitchell decision plus 175 at 5 dimes. I don't think that's bad, but as I always say, if you want to bet Mitchell, I'd at least split that with his money line just in case he finishes, just to save yourself having a loss, at least breaking even or having a small loss as opposed to losing all your money. But I think the money line's probably good enough just to, if you want to bet it, just possibly bet that. I'm going to wait, give it a few more days, see if it does drop. If it does drop, I will watch this fight again, because as I said, I've done so much tape, guys. Memory is a bit hazy, so I would need to refresh before committing. But if it does drop under, if it drops down to like minus 140, I'm definitely going to take another look at it. But the pick here is Bryce Mitchell. Next, we've got Vicente Luque taking on the maniac that is Nico Price. So this is a rematch from a fight from, I think it was about 2.5 years ago they last faced. Let me just double check that. It was a pretty one-sided fight. Luque shut him down, low kicks, pressure, combinations. Nico didn't really have an answer for it. Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago. I don't really know what's changed since. The only concern I do have with regards to Luque is he is racking up the punishment. Since that Nico Price fight, so the Priest and Turner, yeah, no problem. But that Brian Barberena fight was an absolute war. He was going to lose that fight as well. He was down on the judges' scorecards, but he got a knockout with 6 seconds left. But that was one of those fights where it'd take something out of you. Then he had the fight with Mike Perry, which was another brutally tough fight, very close fight, could have gone either way. And then he's coming off a loss to Wonderboy Thompson. A very difficult fight for him stylistically. I bet Wonderboy there. But he took quite a lot of punishment in that fight as well. He's just got that style of Vicente where he's the high shell guard. So he's very hittable. But he doesn't really try and get out of the way. He'll just shell up and then try and throw counters using the shell guard. It's not great for career longevity, but the fact of the matter is the guy still hasn't been knocked out. So I don't want to speculate that his chin is cracking. It definitely will if he keeps having these wars, but so far it has held up. But having said that, Nico Price does have that crazy fuck you power. Since he fought Vicente, he's fought George Sullivan, Randy Brown, Abdul Al Hassan, Tim Means, Jeff Neal, James Vick. I bet him in the George Sullivan fight, and he made it very, very sweaty. He managed to submit Sullivan in the second round. The Randy Brown fight, he was losing, and he got that bizarre hammer fist from the bottom KO. Abdul Al Hassan sparked him out cold very early. Tim Means was chewing him up on the feet, and then bam, out of nowhere, just dropped Tim Means with an evil, I think it was a right hand. Jeff Neal fight, he gave Jeff Neal some problems in that fight. Jeff Neal wasn't comfortable on the feet with him. Ended up getting stopped on the floor. Was it a premature stoppage? Perhaps. And in the James Vick fight, Nico's coming off that up kick KO, which is very rare in MMA. You don't see too many up kick KOs. And we've seen him before. He took out Adam Jabane. He took out Alex Morono, even though it was overturned. So the guy does have scary fuck you power. But although I'm a bit anxious about the damage Vicente's taken, I don't really see what improvements Nico has made. He's still not that well put together as an MMA fighter for me. He's just extremely dangerous, and he knows it, and that now everyone else knows it, so it makes people more nervous. I don't know if that's going to affect how Luque approaches this fight. I mean, when he fought him before, Price was coming off the knockout over Jabane. He'd knocked out Morono, so Luque knew he had power. So I don't think her approach is any different. I think it's got to be the same approach. The big difference is the price. When they last fought, Luque was a slight favourite. Now he's up at minus 290 now. I've avoided it. There's probably a lot of people using Luque in doubles, and I do expect him to get the job done here. But just Nico Price is a scary guy to bet against with that power at that price. You've got the over. The over is the one I'd personally probably be interested in. It's even money, but if you are betting it, you are going to be guaranteed a sweat, because Vicente hurt him on the feet last time and then finished him with a submission. So Luque could finish either way, and then you do have Nico with that power that he holds. So I'm picking Luque. I think he probably gets to finish inside the distance again. Last time they fought, he stopped him. It did go over, but it is going to be a sweat. But I'm just looking at how many times Nico's been KO'd. He's got 2 KO losses. So we had the Jeff Neal one, which was ground and pound, and then obviously the Razak fight where he got just absolutely smashed. But it's not really Luque's style. Razak just came out and just unleashed hell on him. So yeah, I haven't bet the over though. It's going to be a sweaty one, but I don't really think there's any value on Luque's money line either. But I am picking Luque here to win this fight. Right, next we've got Uriah Hall. This is the first fight on the Fox prelims. We've got Uriah Hall taking on Ronaldo Souza. I am denied with regards to a Souza bet on this one, but ultimately passed. It might end up looking like a bargain price, but the problem I've got is Souza is 40 years of age now, so he's definitely on the decline. There's no one beats Father Time. He's coming off a couple of losses. He was losing the Chris Weidman fight until he got the knockout on the judges' cards anyway. Whether you agree with that or not, he was losing on the judges' cards until he got the knockout with a couple of minutes left, and he lost to Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, you can argue that fight as well. It was competitive, but he is declining. I mean, I bet Jacare against Jack Hermansson, and it was just a disappointing performance. I just couldn't believe he didn't really look for the takedown in the fight. It just struck me as a bizarre game plan. He woke up in parts, but it was just too little, too late. His last fight up at light heavyweight against Blachowicz would give me confidence. This is what kind of made me think, or maybe I should bet him here, because he approached that fight with the right game plan. He was putting Jan on the fence. He was looking for takedowns. Jan was just too big and strong, but he did seem to go back to his kind of forte, his grappling strength, as opposed to just trying to strike with him. I think obviously he knew Jan was just too big and powerful for him to contend with on the feet. He couldn't get the takedown, but Jan's got very good takedown defence, and as I said, he's a big light heavyweight. Souza's moving back down to middleweight here. Uriah Hall doesn't have that same type of takedown defence. He can be taken down. I think he was fortunate to get that decision over Carlos Jr. He basically got given the first round for a jab that broke Carlos Jr.'s nose, but I'd still score that round for Carlos Jr. He was taken down a lot in that fight. Ground control. He's never been submitted, so fair play, and he survived the whole of round 3 with Shoeface on his back, so he's got decent submission defence. But we have seen him pounded out on the ground. Musashi pounded him out on the ground. And he's just really unpredictable, Uriah Hall. I mean, the Bevan Lewis fight, he was losing that, and then bang, just dropped Bevan Lewis. Put in an admirable performance against Costa. A decent first round, but in the end the pressure just got too much, and he got folded. Jotko, another fight he was handily losing, and then bam, just out of nowhere put him down. So he's definitely got power, and we have seen Jacare dropped on his arse in some recent fights as well. He didn't get dropped against Hermansson, but Hermansson did stun him at one point. We saw Gastelum put him on his arse, Whitaker put him on his arse. That was before the knockout, like I'm talking about, putting him on his arse with punches. And Uriah Hall, he's got fast hands and he's got big reach advantage here, like 7 inches we're talking. He's going to be firing that jab, but Uriah Hall does back up to the fence. It's something he has improved. He does circle out better now. I've noticed that. I think that's something Falters have been working on him with, but Souza is going to be able to get him to the fence, and I'd be surprised if Souza can't finish the takedowns. The worry as a Souza backer for me would be if he doesn't get the early finish, does he start to fade down the stretch? 40 years of age, as I mentioned at the start of this video, he's training with his wife's weights out of their garage. I did notice in the pictures that he has got Alan Patrick training with him, but I just don't know what kind of training they're getting done. Uriah Hall, I think, has actually been living at the Fortis gym, so he's still been getting some kind of decent training in, and I imagine solid instruction. But I still have to lean Souza here. I just think he can take Uriah down and finish him, and the takedowns are there. I think he's surely fights smart, uses the same strategy he did against Jan, where he just closes the gap, puts him on the fence and looks for those takedowns. As I said, Uriah Hall does back up to the fence, but I would not be shocked if Uriah Hall, if he can survive the first round, start to get his jab going, use his length and strike Souza, and Souza can fall into spells where he doesn't go for takedowns, or as he starts to tire, they just start to get more and more telegraphed. So that is my concern, but I'm gonna pick Souza here. But there is serious trepidation with that pick. I'm not confident. Oh, he's actually been bet up. He's won 5 times anyway. He's minus 135 now. Which, yeah, I'm not going to touch it. But it's Uriah Hall is live in this fight, but I just don't like trusting Uriah Hall. I think he does have a mental lapse. He can just go to sleep in fights, and his power's got him out of a lot of losing propositions. And it may happen again here. You know, as I say, Souza's getting older. He's starting to get dropped on his arse more. But I have to go with Souza here because I do think if he gets one takedown, he can finish Uriah Hall. So I'll go with Souza, probably maybe like a ground and pound type finish on the floor. But it's a dodgy bet. I don't like betting old men. He's on the decline. I would not be shocked if Uriah Hall pulls his off. And especially when you throw in the training situation. As I said earlier, some of these guys, you just don't know what the training situation's been. The Jacare we do. And it's just not ideal at all. Carla Esparza, Michelle Waterson next. Do you know, I don't think I've ever bet on Carla Esparza. I've never bet on Michelle Waterson either. I've bet against Michelle a couple of times. I know I bet Tecia Torres against her. And I bet Joanna Jędrzejczyk against her. I don't feel I have a solid read generally on Michelle though. She's coming off, well, she's obviously coming off the loss to Joanna, but before that 3 wins in a row, I still don't agree with the Courtney Casey win, but she had decent performances against Felice Herrig and Karolina Kowalczyk, a couple of decision wins there. She nicknamed the Karate Hottie, so obviously karate style. She's got a good side kick that she kind of uses like a jab. Her hands aren't particularly efficient and she doesn't deal well with pressure. She's actually got decent takedowns. I used to think she was just a head and arm throw merchant, but she's not. She can snag some decent takedowns. Like she got Carolina down with a nice single leg. So she does have some takedowns, and she used some, I think, single legs against Courtney Casey as well, albeit Courtney Casey does have terrible takedown defence. So she will mix things up from her. She moves well on the feet, side to side, as I said, light on the feet, uses that side kick as like a jab, but she's just not that efficient with her hands, and she doesn't deal well with pressure. Carla Esparza is mainly a wrestler. Her striking has improved. So on the feet, I don't have a massive read on how I think this is going to play out on the feet. I think maybe Michelle's movement could give Carla some issues. But Carla can hit takedowns on Michelle. It's just, if she does hit the takedowns, it's how well she can control Michelle on the bottom. Michelle does throw up arm bars and submission attempts from the bottom. She doesn't necessarily just lay there. And Michelle can probably take Carla down, but what I did notice from tape is Carla is pretty good at scrambling up, so if Michelle does get a takedown, I really don't expect her to be able to hold her down for long. So I guess I have to lean Carla Esparza here, but something's put me off. I mean, the price has gone there anyway, but even when the price was around, I think she was at like minus 130 for a while, something was just putting me off. She's up at minus 150 now. And so I'm actually going to pick Michelle Waterson here. I'm not confident, but I do just prefer the plus 135 to the minus 155. I haven't bet it. I'd prefer Michelle to get to plus 150. But I just think her movement on the feet might make the takedowns a little bit more difficult for Carla. Carla's basic takedown is she does shoot the odd double, but generally she will snag the single leg and she'll take the single leg takedown. That's generally what she goes for. Michelle does throw a lot of kicks, and Carla, when I watch the tape, Carla has caught kicks and hit takedowns off kicks in the past, so there is that worry as well. But I don't think Michelle's just going to lay on her back. I think she will look for submissions from the bottom, try and get back to her feet. I can just see it being a close fight. I'm not blown away by Michelle's stand up, but I think she does have the edge over Carla, and she just needs to move a lot though. She needs to try and deter that takedown attempt of Carla. Carla's stand up has improved, but her path to victory, as in most of her fights, is still to get the takedown and use her strong wrestling and top control. But I don't know, something just has me leaning towards Michelle at that price here. If it was an even money line, I'd probably pick Carla, but as I say, guys, I always go with where I feel the value lies, not necessarily who I think wins, but where I think there's value. And I just see this being a close fight. Carla Esparza doesn't go out generally and dominate fights. and 30-27 people. She's normally involved in close fights. Grasso fight she's coming off was close. The Jandiroba fight was competitive. Cynthia Calvillo was close. I mean, she lost the first round and she did win the next 2 rounds, but it was still a fairly competitive fight. And then the Randa Marcos fight where she lost the split. She just isn't someone that goes out and really dominates. And Michelle's a veteran. She's been around a long time. I can just see it being a close fight, so I'd rather pick the underdog in what I think is going to be a close fight. So I'll go with Michelle Waterson to win a decision there. Heavyweight, my favourite, Aleksei Oleinik taking on Fabrício Werdum. Easy pass fight for me, guys. I know a lot of people are confident in Werdum, but there's no way I'm parting with money on Werdum at -300. He's up at -330 now. There's a lot of unknowns here. Werdum's coming up to 43 years of age. He's coming off a drug suspension. He's not fought in 2 years. No, it's a long layoff at that age. Just a lot of question marks. I can see why people like Werdum. It looks like a good fight on paper, but Oleinik's a dog, man. He's the same age as well, 42. He's got really freaky length. He's not a great striker, but he wings these punches and they just seem to have more length on them than what people are anticipating, and he just manages to catch people on the end of his punches. He obviously got that dangerous grappling game, but I'm sure Fabrício would be able to nullify it. We're talking one of the best heavyweight grapplers we've had in MMA, but I don't like the price. I don't like the price at all. And how is Fabrício going to look? I don't know. Now I'm going to pick Aleksei here. I know a lot of people are going to raise their eyebrows at that, and I don't really have a method to the mad pick. But as I said, Fabrício is old. I know he's the same age as Aleksei, but at least we've seen Aleksei in recent times. We know what we're getting. How has Fabrício dealt with the 2-year layoff? How is he going to look off the peds? He's coming off a KO loss. No. -330. No, thank you. I'll pick Aleksei here to win in some kind of random heavyweight manner. I'm not advocating a bet on it. What I am advocating is not betting Fabrício Werdum at over -300 with all them question marks at heavyweight. So Aleksei Oleinik, as I've said in the last fight, I don't necessarily pick who I think is going to win. I go with where I feel there's value, and I feel Werdum's being overvalued. Now I may end up having egg on my face. He might come out and just whoop Oleinik, but historically at heavyweight, long layoffs, off peds, old, hell of a lot of question marks to be betting someone as a over -300 favourite. Next we've got another fight where it's just, I don't know how anyone can be trusting Donald Cerrone or Anthony Pettis, to be completely honest. These 4 fights actually, well, besides Esparza, Waterson, you've got Souza who's 40 on the decline. You've got Uriah Hall who's just has these crazy mental lapses. You've got old men, Oleinik and Werdum, long layoffs, and now you've got Cerrone and Pettis, who are 2 fighters that are definitely at the tail end of their careers. I've given up trusting either of them. It's obviously a rematch from before. Pettis blew him away with a body kick. We know that Cerrone is susceptible to the body, so it's probably going to be something Pettis is going to target. But they're just both in a serious decline. I mean, Pettis just got absolutely mugged by Diego Ferreira. Just looked completely out of his depth. The Nate Diaz fight was bizarre. He was looking in complete control. It looked like Pettis was going to win that fight early in round 2, and then all of a sudden his cardio just died on him, and Diaz took over and just smashed him for the rest of the fight. Fight before that, he got the win over Wonder Boy, but he was getting tooled for almost 2 rounds, and then out of nowhere landed that Superman punch on Thompson and put him down. And before that, Tony Ferguson, he took a beating in that fight. He had his moment, he hurt Ferguson with a right hand, but outside of that, he just got beaten down. He's definitely in the twilight of his career. Donald Cerrone, exactly the same situation, except he's probably coming off worse beatings, and his chin has properly eroded. I think Pettis still has a chin, but he's coming off that nasty knockout loss to Conor McGregor. Before that, nasty knockout loss to Justin Gaethje. Fight before that, nasty 2-round beatdown where his face was a mess against Tony Ferguson. His fight before that against Al Quinta was a very solid performance, pulled out the win there, and the fight before that against Alex Hernandez. But Cerrone just fights so regular, it catches up with you eventually, and it has. I mean, look, Ferguson, Gaethje, McGregor, that's a murderer's row, but I just don't like the way that he lost in all 3 fights, all tough fights for him. He's 37 years of age now, and I mean, the McGregor fight wasn't even that long ago, was it? January. He just doesn't take any rest. Cerrone, 37. But having said all that, I don't trust Pettis either. Now the line's come down a bit. I did see Cerrone up at plus 130 at one point. I'm going to pick the underdog again here. I'm not betting this fight, by the way, guys. I don't trust either of them. I don't really see how anyone can be confident either way. But I think it should be more like a pick-em fight. Yeah, Pettis has probably got the durability advantage over Cerrone, and he can crack Pettis. And Cerrone's chin is looking like it's... or not looking, looks like it is cracked now. But I still don't trust I trust Cerrone much more in a 3-round fight. Pettis just seems to mentally implode. Now Cerrone does have this habit of not turning up in fights, and you know, he seems to have his own mental demons. But once you get into the fight, you can kind of trust Cerrone that he's gonna stay with it. His cardio's always good. Pettis can just kind of flag in a fight like the Diaz fight, prime example, where he just looked in control and he just died. And I didn't like the way he was just... I know he wasn't like knocked out like Cerrone was against Gaethje or against McGregor, but I mean, he just got dominated by CDF for 1.5 rounds. It just wasn't a good look at all. So I'm going to pick Cerrone here just based on the odds. It's not a confident pick. I wouldn't trust either guy with my money, but I think it should be more like a pick'em. So I think there's a little bit of value on Cerrone. I think if you manage to get the plus 130, I think that's a decent bet. I definitely wouldn't go big on it. I don't know what way the line's going to go, so I couldn't say wait and see if Cerrone goes back up to plus 130. I don't know if it will. I've just got no idea, but I wouldn't trust either guy with my money. They're both shot. They're both declining. But as the underdog, I will pick Donald Cerrone. First fight on the pay-per-view main card, we've got Greg Hardy taking on Yorgan de Castro at heavyweight. Hardy's got a 5-inch reach advantage here, or 6-inch reach advantage, 5 inches in height. Started to put a decent little game behind him as Hardy, training out of American Top Team. He's not the power puncher that I think everyone thought he was going to be based off of his Contender Series fights. I definitely don't think he's got that kind of freaky kind of power. But he's starting to put a decent game together. Fairly technical stand-up game seems to be where he's kind of going towards, using his jab, fighting from the outside. He's not coming into brawl. So for someone early in his career at heavyweight to be putting that kind of game together, I think that's pretty smart. Now, he's obviously extremely athletic and he does hit hard. I'm not saying he doesn't hit hard, but he just doesn't have the kind of power that I think everyone thought he was going to have. You watch his first or his 2 Contender Series fights and he absolutely crushes them, but hasn't really transpired so much in the UFC. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't got power, but we saw in the Crowder fight, Crowder was kind of taking what he was dishing out up until the disqualification, and the Smolakov fight, Smolakov was just absolutely terrified, didn't want to be in there with him at all. One Adams was the hammer fist from the takedown attempt, and then Ben Sassoli, which has been overturned to a no contest because I think it was because that was the inhaler one, wasn't it? but he survived 3 rounds, was never really in trouble against Hardy, and then he's coming off the Volkov loss where he hurt his hand in that fight, so that seemed to have an impact on his performance. But that was a good fight for Hardy to go in there that early in his career against a veteran like Volkov and see 3 rounds. That's only going to stand you in good stead, even in defeat. Yorgan de Castro, I remember watching Yorgan before his Contender Series fight, and he looked absolutely terrible. But he came in on Contender Series, utilised the leg kicks, fucked up the wrestler, and got the stoppage. And then he's coming off that really quick KO win over Justin Tafar, where Tafar just ran into an evil counter. So what you're probably going to find here is, I just think Hardy's just going to stick the jab out, fight him long. If the knockout comes, it comes. If not, he'd be happy to take home a decision win. I think Hardy gets the job done here. Obviously, this is a lower level fight. Hardy is still pretty raw in MMA. Castro's pretty raw. They've only had, between the two of them, around like less than 15 fights, I think it is, professionally. So they're both still early into their careers. And Castro is making improvements, because he's definitely improved since that fight I watched of his before the Contender Series. I think it was the fight against Carlton Little Senior, and it might not have been that fight. I can't remember what fight it was I watched. There was one. It wasn't one of the first round ones. It was definitely one that either went into the third round. So it was either the David White fight I found or the Carlton Little fight. But yeah, he's definitely made some improvements since those days. But I just think Greg Hardy's going to be a bit too technical for him. He's going to fight long. He's not going to get the fight he's probably used to at heavyweight. Castro, where he just gets a brawl. He's going to get a more technical fighter here. So I'm going to go with Hardy. I will say I do like the over in this fight. I don't know what the price is now, but it depends where you're looking. I mean, 5 times it's -145, which isn't too bad, but then Bet Online it's -160. William Hill, I've got it at -175. I won't be playing -175. Even I think anything over -150 is starting to get a bit too steep. But I do like the over in that fight. But I mean, if you like Hardy, the money line's still at -200. It's not terrible. Hardy decision is sitting at +250 on average, looking across the books. Heavyweight though, so is there value on that? I mean, I think with the style we're seeing from Hardy, I don't think that's a bad bet. I mean, obviously keep it small, but I think there's maybe a bit of value there. But I do like Hardy here to get a solid points win, and if he gets the stoppage, it's a bonus for him. Jeremy Stephens, Calvin Kattar next in the men's featherweight division. Calvin's got a 1-inch reach advantage over Jeremy. He's a couple of inches taller. Jeremy strikes landing per minute's 3, Calvin's 5. Strikes absorbed, Jeremy is at 3, Calvin's up at over 6. Takedowns aren't going to come into play here. This is going to be a stand-up fight. You've basically got the boxer, Calvin Kattar, very solid boxing skill set, taking on Jeremy Stephens, more of a wild man, big power. But something he has added to his game, Stephens, is the calf kicks. Now, we have seen Calvin struggle with that in the past in the UFC. He had big difficulty when he fought Renato Canero with the low kicks. Canero basically just beat his legs up, gave him all sorts of problems, and he lost the decision there. He has got very solid boxing though, Calvin Kattar. His last fight was against Zabit Magomed Sharapov, lost the first couple of rounds. As with most Zabit fights, Zabit lost the third round where he was slowing down. Calvin was coming on strong. Same thing happened when Stephens fought Zabit as well. Lost the first 2 rounds, came on strong in the third round and won the third round. So I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's a very interesting fight. I think the line's a bit too wide on Calvin. He's been sitting at basically -250. Hasn't moved at all. I think people look at Jeremy's record, 28-17. They look at his UFC record. He's got a high number of losses, and I mean, he has lost his last 3 fights. He is starting to perhaps look a little bit shop-worn, Jeremy. Hurt to the body against Aldo and ultimately stopped. Yeah, Rodriguez hurting badly to the body as well. So is that a sign that things are starting to add up for Stephens now? He's had a lot of fights. You know, we're talking he's getting on for 50 fights. A lot of fights, a lot of mileage. 3 losses in a row. He might even be fighting for his job here potentially. So there's going to be pressure on Stephens. I don't think he can compete technically with Calvin. I think Calvin's just a better boxer. He's definitely got more power. Calvin's definitely got to be wary of the power. I think if Jeremy's to win this fight, it needs to be giving Calvin all sorts of problems with them calf kicks. We've seen Jeremy implement them. He is good with them. He hurt Gilbert Melendez badly with them, but it is still, I mean, they're not low percentage, but you need them to inflict damage and to start affecting Calvin's movement. And if he doesn't do that, I just don't see him winning this fight. Now, I'm not keen on betting Calvin at minus 250, I must say. I do feel it's a little bit too wide. And Jeremy is historically a tough guy to put away. Like I said, he has been stopped a couple of times, well, hurt a couple of times recently, but it was to the body. But if Stephens comes out and pressure, I mean, we saw Chris Fishgold come out and really put the pressure on Calvin, and he was doing all right, Chris, but he just blew his wad, just came out really aggressive. I mean, Calvin covered up well and he didn't really take too much damage, but it was a good start from Chris Fishgold, but he just couldn't sustain it. Jeremy Stephens, very good cardio, but he has to find that balance between brawling and fighting technically, which he has tended to find pretty well over the last few years. I mean, he has fought elite competition. He's not been getting gimme fights, Jeremy Stephens. Yeah, Rodriguez, Zabit Magomed Sharapov, Jose Aldo, Josh Emmett, Superboy, Renato Canero, Frankie Edgar. The only gimme fight really he's had is the Gilbert Melendez fight in the last, nearly 4 years. Otherwise he's had really tough competition. But it does just seem technically like Calvin's a step ahead, and unless Jeremy can implement those leg kicks and do damage, and I just don't know if he can. I just don't like the price on Calvin though. I'm going to pick him here, but I don't like the price at all. I think if I was going to bet anything on this fight, I'd probably take the over 2.5 rounds. Minus 175. I don't think it's a bad price. Calvin, I mean, Jeremy, obviously he does crack. If he lands something, he puts you away, but in terms of his durability, he's always proven to be durable. Has been hurt to the body a couple of times, but in terms of the head, he still seems to have a solid set of whiskers. And Calvin, he's never been KO'd. He has got some power. When we saw him put away Lamas, Fishgold, Shane Burgess, but Jeremy Stephens is very durable. So I like the over 2.5. If I was going to bet on this fight, I'd be looking at the over 2.5. You can still get like the minus 175 price. I think that's where the value is on this fight. It's cheaper than paying for Calvin, a lot cheaper. I mean, if you like Jeremy, then obviously Jeremy's sitting at a good price, but I just think he's going to struggle with Calvin's boxing, so I'm just not leaning towards a Jeremy bet. But I do like the over 2.5 there at minus 175. So I'm going to pick Calvin to win a decision. Next, the men's heavyweight division. We've got Francis Ngannou taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Really looking forward to this fight. Francis has been out nearly a year. I'm keen to see what improvements he's made to his game. And yeah, kickboxing background. He isn't going to look to wrestle. One of the few opponents really where there's going to be no wrestling threat that Ngannou has faced in recent times. Of course, Junior Dos Santos, no wrestling threat, but Cain Velasquez came into that fight with the wrestling threat. He had the rematch with Curtis Blades. Of course, Blades has got the wrestling threat. Derek Lewis, no, of course not. But then before that, Stipe Miocic with the wrestling threat. So he has fought a few opponents recently that have had that in their back pocket. So I wonder if that was, I mean, not that it made a difference because Francis slept them all very quickly, well, except Stipe. But going into the fights, it would have been in the back of his mind. But here against Jair, he knows that there's zero wrestling threat. He can really just let his fist do the talking here without having to worry about overextending and getting taken down. Obviously, he needs to be mindful of overextending and getting caught with a counter, but there's just zero grappling threat whatsoever. I mean, even Overeem's got a grappling threat that you would probably be wary of going into that fight. But here, absolutely none whatsoever. You know what you're going to get, a stand-up fight. Francis has a 5-inch reach advantage here, which I think is really, really big. There's also a notion going around that Francis is only a counter fighter. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't counter. He does, and he does it very well, and a lot of his knockouts are off the counters. But I think he's dangerous offensively as well, especially where he's got that long reach. If you go back and look at his fights, just ones off the top of my head that I know where he initiated the fight ending sequence was the Curtis Blades first fight. Now obviously he did get stopped because of a doctor stoppage, but he hurts Blades a couple of times in that fight. I think both in the first round. One of them, I went back and rewatched this actually, one of them was off a counter, but one of them was from Francis leading. He stopped Bojan Mohajlovic from leading as well. He was very aggressive against Stipe Miocic in the first round. Obviously he didn't get Stipe out of there, but he was being very aggressive with his leading in that fight. His knockout of Luis Enrique was from Ngannou leading, and his stoppage of Curtis Blades in the rematch was from him leading as well. So this notion that he's just a counter fighter, he'll only counter, I don't agree with that at all. I know we've got the Derek Lewis fight, which I just think is a bit of a random outlier. I don't know whether his confidence was low from the Stipe fight. That's the only thing I can think, because I know that there was a lot going around that in training he'd kind of bought into this notion that he was unbeatable and so forth, and I just think maybe his confidence was just shot from that Stipe fight where he realised he can be beaten, he is human, people can take his punches and he can be taken down and he can be grinded out. But since then, you know, he's got the 3 first round knockout wins, his confidence is back. I just can't see him coming in and putting in another performance like that, especially under the circumstances. You know, everyone's been under lockdown. He's got a chance here where he's going to have so many eyes on him. I just really surely can't see him putting in another performance like he did against Derek Lewis. He's got the big reach advantage here. Yeah, he's an experienced kickboxer. He's a dangerous guy. He's obviously got some power. We saw the nice counter left hook he caught Orlovsky with and put him down. He dropped Crowder with a jab and finished him with ground and pound. And he's coming off the the one punch KO win over Overeem in a fight where he was handedly losing. He was going to lose the decision. He somehow pulled it out of the bag with literally 10 seconds left. So he has got a dangerous guy in front of him. But yeah, he's been knocked out in kickboxing as well. Now that's not unexpected. He's had a lot of kickboxing fights. Everyone pretty much gets stopped at some point in their professional career, if you're a boxer or kickboxer, whatever it may be. But I did go and just look at the knockouts just to see what they were like. And both of them, he was literally one punch KO'd and couldn't get off the mat to beat the 10 count. Haven't really seen him hit in MMA. Now I can assure you, if Francis Ngannou lands, he's going to be hitting him harder than anyone's ever hit him in his life with them 4-ounce gloves on. So it just gives me confidence that if Ngannou lands, he's probably going to put this guy to sleep. I mean, even Junior Albini, I went back and watched all year's UFC fights. It doesn't take long, except for the Reem fight. And even Albini was landing, not much because a lot of it was grappling, but he did land a nice, I think it was a nice overhand he landed on in the first round. And Albini was at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. Francis has got a 5-inch reach advantage here. And also Albini landed a nice combination just before he actually got knocked out himself. He lands a nice combination on So He's getting caught here by a guy who's not a very good striker and who's at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. And now he's taking on someone like Ngannou, who, Alistair Overeem has changed his style completely. He knows he's got no chin. He doesn't want to get knocked out. He tries to fight long. He tries to stay out of danger. Francis has shown a solid chin. We've never really seen it overly tested, but he did eat some shots from Stipe and took them no problem. So I'm pretty confident he's got a pretty solid chin. So Francis needs to bear that in mind. He needs to go out and put on a performance here. Use his reach. I'm not saying he needs to rush anything, but if he can go out and put away here in the first round, he just doesn't want a repeat of that Derek Lewis fight. And I'm sure that fight must be sowed in Francis's mind, because you ask a lot of fans what their worst fight ever is, and a lot of them will pick out the Francis Ngannou Derek Lewis fight. So I'm going to go with Ngannou here to win, and I think he's going to put away in the first round. I am a little bit apprehensive about betting the money line though. He's actually been bet down a little bit. He's minus 265 at 5 dimes, just because Francis just isn't proven really beyond the first round. I know he beat Curtis Blades in the first fight across 2 rounds, but both were really raw fighters, and Blades stand up has improved a lot. He didn't really have much stand up back then. He's a competent striker, so part of me would like to see Francis kind of go to 3 rounds, just to get rid of that monkey on his back with regards to the Derek Lewis fight, and whether he can competently fight across 3 rounds, and if he can't knock someone out, if he can use his striking well enough to win a nice points victory, and also showcase fighting at a higher pace than the Derek Lewis fight, that he's got some solid cardio, which I think his cardio is decent enough, as long as he doesn't kind of go all out or get wrestled. That's when the problems arise. But I think in a striking fight it'll be fine. I mean, it held up fine against Blades years ago across 2 rounds. So there is that slight concern that if he does get extended, what is going to happen? So it kind of puts me off the money line. But a line I do like for this fight is I do like the under sitting at, I mean, it's not far short of even money. It's kind of depends where you look. Minus 115. I don't think that's a bad line. Now, Francis seems to have a very solid chin, but it's still heavyweight. It only takes 1 punch, and is coming off 4 UFC fights, 4 KO wins. Albeit I know the Overeem one was in the final seconds of the 5th round, but he's still 1 punched Overeem, and again, I know that doesn't mean a great deal because Overeem doesn't have the best chin, neither does Aleksei, but he still put these guys away. So he's got power, he's a dangerous guy himself, and Francis has just been, I mean, you just look at the guy's record, he just puts everyone away quickly. His last 3 fights have lasted less than 2.5 minutes combined. Obviously you've got the Derek Lewis debacle, you've got the Stipe Miocic fight which went 5, but then before that Reem, Aleksei, Hamilton, Bojan all stopped in under 2 minutes apiece. So this guy, he's got some freaky power. The Luis Enrique fight does go just over 1.5 rounds, but the uppercut knockout is brutal. And then Curtis Blades, he has Curtis Blades hurt twice in the first round, and Blades has got a chin. Is anyone else going to be able to take those shots? Still had the guy hurt. So if Blades didn't have such a good chin, most other fighters would have got put away in that first round. Then you're looking at every single win he's got is literally under 5 minutes, or most of them under 2 minutes. Just the Luis Enrique's UFC debut that went just over 2.5. So, the stats are there. Is a credential kickboxer. He may hang back here. He's going to be wary of the power. And we did see the Overeem fight was a bit of a dull affair. So, there is the possibility that this could end up being a stinker. But I think Francis, he can't allow that to happen. Like I said, he's rebuilt himself. He's got them 3 good wins. He's literally going to have the world watching him in this fight as well. It's a great chance to really put a stamp and get your name out there. So I just can't see Francis allowing that to happen again. He's got to go for the jugular here. So I do like the under at pretty much even money on a heavyweight fight where we've got Ngannou, who basically finishes everyone in the first round, and who's finished everyone in the first round. And I can see where people are coming from, where this could end up being a staring match. I do get that angle, but I think when we're getting even money pretty much on a fight to end under 1.5 rounds between two heavyweights that in the UFC have barely seen a second round, I think it's a risk probably worth taking. But I am picking Ngannou to win, and I think he will win by knockout. Next co-main event, Dominick Cruz is back taking on Henry Cejudo for the Bantamweight title. Cejudo is a -230 favourite, Cruz +190 underdog. Be honest guys, I don't have a strong opinion on this fight. Dominick Cruz is coming back from a 4-year layoff. Now I have some commandments in place with regards to betting. One of them is I can't bet on a fighter that has had a long layoff, and 4 years is, I mean, you've not had many fighters come back from more than a 4-year layoff. That is a long time. Dominick Cruz, excellent fighter, excellent movement, very strong wrestling background, great speed, great reflexes. And this is the other part that concerns me, is he does rely on those speed and reflexes. He is a bantamweight fighter. Now MMA is quite a new sport, so we don't have a great deal of sample sizes to go off. But I mean, you look at boxing. In boxing, the lighter weight fighters are always the first ones to either retire or to drop off a cliff, because the lighter guys rely on their reflexes more, but they rely on their speed more. And that's the first thing you start to lose as a fighter. Dominick Cruz is 34 years of age now. That's pretty old for a bantamweight fighter. He's not fought in, well, it's not 4 years, it'll be like 3.5 years, but it's still a hell of a long time. He had a long layoff back in, he fought Demetrius Johnson in 2011. Then he had basically 3 years off then before he fought Gaethje. Now, it's a long time, 3 years, but back then, you know, we're talking 9 years ago when he started that layoff. So he was 25, he came back when he was 28. You're still in your prime then, even at bantamweight. Came back, he beat Gaethje, and then he had another 18 months off. So 18 months is still a long time, but again, it's not. I don't think 18 months is that bad. And he again was that was 4 years ago, so he was about 30 then. So he's still kind of in your prime, but he's out of his prime years now as a bantamweight fighter, and the reason he's had these layoffs is due to injuries. These injuries have to be taking their toll on him. There's no way, surely, that he can be coming back at 34 years of age. Just even age alone, without the injuries, age alone with the layoffs, you'd expect some kind of drop-off. With the injuries, there just has to be a drop-off in performance. I just can't see how he can come back and be the same Dominick Cruz. Cody Garbrandt put on a real good performance in that fight, and I wonder if Cruz had lost. Sometimes it's hard to see if a fighter's lost a step because you won't necessarily see it with a naked eye. It's just little things. And against Cody, I mean, everyone put it down to a great Cody performance, and it was. But was there a slight lost step in that fight for Cruz? And if there was, 3.5 years later on, his first fight back, he's going to have lost something else as well. And that's the concern for me here for Cruz, is just if he has had that drop off, I think he's going to lose this fight. Now, I can fully see the angle for why people would bet him. It's not my style with the long layoff and all the question marks. Not my style, even as an underdog. But I do understand, because a prime Cruz has a style that could present some problems for Henry Cejudo. Remember, this is Henry's only second fight up at 135. He's coming off the fight with Marlon Moraes. Sorry, his second fight, because he fought. No, the TJ rematch was at 125, wasn't it? Yeah, 125, because I remember TJ had made the ridiculous cut down. So this is only his second fight up at 135. Marlon Moraes came out at a really strong first round, but just basically blew his wad. Henry Cejudo showed how physically tough he is, how mentally tough he is, because he went into that fight with an injury as well, and he just wore Marlon out and ended up finishing him. Dominick doesn't have the same kind of style as Marlon. He's not as powerful. It doesn't throw it in such an explosive manner. So Cruz isn't going to get, so at least historically, he's fine with going 5 rounds. But there's less chance of Dominick Cruz being a danger to Cejudo in terms of stopping him than there was with Marlon Moraes, who is more of a danger in terms of stopping someone. So you can definitely see this fight going 5 rounds. And if Cruz, if he is still somewhere near his best, this could be a close fight. Henry Cejudo's improved a lot as a fighter. His wrestling didn't transition that well to MMA, but he used it well against Mighty Mouse when they had their second fight. I still don't think he won that fight personally, but the judges gave it to him. And then obviously he's coming off the KO wins over TJ Dillashaw and Marlon Moraes. Dillashaw, chin probably compromised, probably shouldn't have been cutting down to 125. Marlon blew his wad. Dominick isn't going to come out as aggressive as TJ, and I don't see him blowing his wad like Marlon, so I do see this fight going long. Henry's stand-up has improved a lot. Would he be able to contend standing with a prime Cruz? Standing, probably not. The movement would probably give him a lot of problems and issues. Henry, you've got to imagine he's going to try and mix in his wrestling here, his clinch game against the fence. But Dominick historically has had very good wrestling, but I just can't ignore the layoff. But having said that, I'm not advocating a bet on Henry either, just because stylistically Dominick could pose problems. So my opinion on this fight is I'm going to wait to live bet it. I want to see how Dominick looks in the first round. If Dominick Cruz comes out and looks really good, I still don't think the line's going to flip greatly, because it's a 5-round fight. I don't think people are going to be steaming in to bet Cruz, because you've still got 4 more rounds to go. So it is risky, because that could happen and it could end up being unplayable. But I really don't see him coming out and just kind of giving Henry Cejudo a good kicking in the first round to make it unplayable thereafter. So my strategy with this fight is just to live bet it, because I need to see how Dominick Cruz looks. Is he anywhere near his best? Has he dropped off a cliff? How's Henry Cejudo looking? Because I know Henry's coming off some shoulder surgery himself, but I have to go with Henry here, just because I think it would go down, if Cruz pulls this off, it goes down as one of the best performances ever, because of 4-year lay or 3.5-year layoff, injuries, and he's had layoffs before that. He's fought, how many fights has the guy had in recent years? He's had since Demetrius Johnson fight back in 2011. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4. He's basically had 4 fights in almost 9 years. So to come in and rip the title from Henry Cejudo would be nothing short of astonishing. And 4 fights in almost 9 years, and he's coming off a 3.5-year layoff, and he's 34 years of age at Bantamweight. It's asking a lot. But Cruz is someone that always says he doesn't believe in ring rust as well. But the other flip side to this is what kind of, this fight was put together pretty late notice. How has Cruz been with regards to training? Has he been training a lot? It throws up the old question mark about the training regimes and everything again. But trying to second guess that is very difficult. That's why I said just keep your units at a reduced level for a while, as opposed to trying to second guess the training routines and whatnot. Let's just see how it plays out. But I'm going to pick Cejudo to win a decision here. But my strategy will be to live bet it. I just want to see how Dominick Cruz looks, because he might look dog shit. He might come out and surprise me and look as good as ever, but I just can't see it. Main event time, we've got Justin Gaethje taking on Tony Ferguson at lightweight in what is going to be an absolute war as long as it lasts. Tony Ferguson is my favourite fighter bar none. Love watching this guy. I've bet him in his last 9 fights. He's been a cash cow for me. But he's taken on a very, very dangerous opponent in Justin Gaethje here. Justin has got some ridiculous knockout power. His last 3 fights, I think it is, he's knocked out guys in the first round. I'm just bringing up Justin's record. Cerrone took out in the first round, Edson Barboza the first round, James Vick the first round. The guy's got some power on him. On the flip side, we have seen him beaten in the UFC as well. Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. Now they were wars. Dustin Poirier looked like he was done to me in that fight, but somehow he came back and won. And then the Eddie Alvarez fight was back and forth as well. His debut against Michael Johnson, he was in all sorts of bother, but as we saw pre-UFC, a lot of guys just punch themselves out on Justin Gaethje, and although Gaethje's got a nasty habit of slowing down himself, he's one of them that would just fight through it better than the opponent, because the opponent is always gassed as well, because you have to hit him with so much volume to try and stop him. You end up gassing yourself out. He's got very good leg kicks as well, real evil nasty leg kicks that he puts in. The guy's a joy to watch. He's kill or be killed. He's got an excellent wrestling background that he just completely ignores because he wants to put on entertaining fights. The guy's an absolute savage. Tony Ferguson, the guy's an absolute beast. As I said, I've bet him his last 9 fights in a row. He's been a little bit inactive recently though. We only saw him fight once in 2017, once in 2018 and once in 2019. Last fought a year ago. And he is getting up there in age now, Tony. He's 36 years of age. So Father Time is definitely running against him. If anyone was to thrive in the current environment, it is Tony Ferguson though. This guy's training regime will not be affected at all. He's pretty happy training on his own. Obviously he does mix in with bodies and so forth, but he's got his own crew. He's not at a big camp. This guy will be 100% happy, probably training as normal. He's probably not even been affected. So if there was one person I had to pick that this kind of situation we're all in wouldn't have affected training wise and being prepared for a fight, it's Tony Ferguson. He was meant to fight Gaethje 3 weeks ago when the card got cancelled. He still cut weight for the fight, which is a concern because he's not a small lightweight, Tony. There was no need to do that. Now I know he likes to play these mental games and so forth, but I don't know if that was the wisest choice, compromising your body when you're going to have to do it again 3 weeks later and you're taking on a puncher like Justin Gaethje, who can sleep any man. So that's a slight concern. The way I see this fight playing out, guys, is Justin Gaethje is going to be really dangerous in round 1, probably dangerous in round 2. Tony needs to survive the first round, and I think if he does, he starts to take over the fight. But Tony can be caught, he can be dropped. We saw Pettis drop him. People talk about Kevin Lee dropping him. It wasn't really hurt. I don't really class it as a proper knockdown, but he definitely did get his bell rung by Anthony Pettis, 100%. Lando Benetta had him in some trouble as well. The first round against Donald Cerrone was quite competitive. He dropped the first round to Rafael dos Anjos. Lost the first round to Kevin Lee as well. Edson Barboza, I didn't go back and watch that fight. I'm just trying to think. I know he had the point docked. So without the point dock, I think he still lost the first round to Barboza as well. So he can be a slow starter. You've got to be very wary of that here against Justin Gaethje, because Gaethje is really, really dangerous. But as I said, Gaethje is extremely hittable, and he does throw out a lot of volume, and he does slow down. Tony Ferguson, his most underrated weapon is his teep kick to the body. He uses it so well. I never see anyone really talking about it, but he uses it really well to take the wind out of guys. And Tony Ferguson's gas tank is like nothing you have ever seen. This guy has the best cardio I've ever seen. Just keeps coming. The pressure builds. He doesn't slow down. Crazy volume. I honestly feel Gaethje needs a round 1 knockout here, or he's going to end up feeling like he's in quicksand and he just gets drowned by Ferguson's pressure. I mean, round 2 he's still going to be a threat, but by then Ferguson would have started finding his range. The pressure will be ramped up. I'm really intrigued to see how round 1 plays out in terms of who's on the front foot, because these are both front foot fighters. Who is going to dictate the octagon in that first round? I'm really intrigued to see that. But Tony needs to survive round 1, and the longer the fight goes, the better his chances improve. Great fight. It's going to be great entertainment however long it lasts, and you can make a case for either side here. But I'm gonna stick with my boy Tony. I'm gonna pick him to win. Round 1 is gonna be very precarious, but I just think he just takes over. As long as he doesn't get knocked out in that first round, I just think he takes over down the stretch. He's got those nasty elbows as well, where he cuts people up. If you guys haven't seen the collage of his last, I think it's 7 opponents, go and have a look at it on the internet. Everyone's face is just a mess. He's got the nastiest elbows in the game. Guy is just evil. One other thing to note as well, though, is Tony did have that serious knee injury that he healed himself and came back in like half the time the doctors were saying he would. When he fought Anthony Pettis, you could still see like a heavy, fresh scar on his leg. So Gaethje's gonna definitely target that with his leg kicks. As I said, he throws those heavy leg kicks, but he can be. We have seen him out or beaten out in the throes of the fire against Poirier and Alvarez. So I just think Tony Ferguson is not someone that you want to have in your face. You don't want to be going into a round 3 against Tony Ferguson, let's put it that way, in a 5-round fight. It's just, there's not many people that, if they're still in a fight with Tony Ferguson in round 3, there's not many, if anyone, that's going to come out on top against that guy and that insane pressure and cardio that he has. And he would have got his timing down by them as well. He rolls with punches quite well, Tony, actually. He does get hit, but he does roll with them quite well. So there's only a handful of UFC fighters that were good at rolling with punches. Robbie Lawler's another one, very good at rolling with them. So although they're getting hit, they're just not taking the full power. So that has got him out of trouble in the past, but you've just got to be so careful with Gaethje and the power he possesses. But it's a great fight. It's a great way to come back to this main event, Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson. I can't wait to see it. But I'm gonna go with Tony to get a late stoppage here. I think he's gonna just bring the pain, survive the first round. I'm not in love with the money line, though, I've got to admit. -180 isn't overly appealing, but for me, Tony Ferguson to win this fight. That wraps up the card, guys. I'm probably going to do the Wednesday card on Thursday. Just to give you a recap on the service, I didn't say at the start, it's £195 or $250 for the year. You get full access to pre-bets and live betting. £100 per unit members won £14,500 last year, so last year members got a great return on their investment. I post all of my bet slips on Twitter. No one posts their bet slips, and if they do, they cover up the stakes. I don't understand that at all from people that are asking for money for tips. I like to prove that A, I'm betting what I'm tipping, and B, that I am betting a large amount. I use £1,000 units, and I like to prove that to guys that are potentially going to join the service and to the guys that I've got on board, because if I'm not betting what I'm tipping and I'm not proving it, how can I then be tipping and asking people to pay money for a service? It's absolutely ridiculous that people do this, or when they do post a bet slip, they cover up the stake. Like, what are you hiding? Like, surely if you're asking for money for a service, you should be proving it, betting in that particular sector, and by all accounts you should have a high bankroll, because if you're successful at it, you should have built your bankroll over time. We give out a lot of money management as well. I treat this as investing, not gambling, guys. I treat it as an investment in these fighters. We can't win every show. I say this all the time. Do not expect to win every show. It's absolutely impossible. You've got to take it across the course of the year. 99% of members are with us for 12 months. You will win money across the year, but you've got to treat it as a long-term service. If I won every show, I'd be a rich man. We can't win every show, but what we can do is win long-term and beat the books and not make stupid bets. Make sensible bets, not reach on bets, guys, because we've just had a 6-week layoff. We are going to get the same amount of UFC shows as we would have got. There's no need to start reaching for bets. If you are doing stuff like that, you probably need to take a step back and look at yourself and think whether you should be betting, because you need to treat it like an investment. You can change your life with betting on MMA or combat sports, boxing as well, as long as you use the money wisely. Set the money aside, save up the money that you're winning, and invest it wisely. So it is treated as an investment, guys. I don't see this as pure gambling. A lot of work goes into the bets and tips, a lot of tape, many hours goes into it, and I've won for many years now. All of our bets are tracked online as well. There's links to the free trackers below this video. You can also find them on our website, prommmabetting.com. All pre-bets are tracked, all live bets are tracked, and all boxing bets, and sometimes we do some parlays with boxing and UFC. I can't track them on Bet MMA because it's just for MMA, so I use a separate tracker to track all them. So there's free trackers, every single bet tracked, 100% transparency. You will not find anyone more transparent. Any questions, feel free to DM me on Twitter at Pro MMA Betting. Drop us an email, info@prommabetting.com. Message us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, guys. Had good momentum going that's been broken, so I'd like to pick that back up, and we'll be back Thursday for the next show. I've rambled on a lot today. It's like an hour and a half. I normally try and keep it to under an hour, but there was kind of a lot to go over. The fights, as I started talking about them, more stuff was coming back to memory. And please remember, I would reduce your unit size just for this particular show, just so you aren't putting yourself at risk in a situation that we've never been in before. We could see some guys underperforming. So let's see how the next 3 shows go. It's only a week. See how those 3 shows go. If things are pretty much as normal, I'd recommend going back to your normal betting size, unit size. But at the moment, I would recommend just keeping the units reduced, just to see how things look, how the fighters are dealing with the situation, etc. So best of luck with your bets. Let's hope we have a really fun show to enjoy, and I'll be back in a few days for the Wednesday card. Over and out.